Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Brewing Business Show. This is a space dedicated to the craft beer industry and entrepreneurs who wants to learn more about mindset, health, wealth, business, and of course, beer. I'm your host, Pedro Meneses, and before we start, I just want to make sure you buckle up, crack open a cold one, and get ready to hear some life-changing information. Cheers! Welcome back, everybody, to episode 22 of the Brewing Business Show. And before we start, I just want to say thank you guys to all of you who've been supporting this project. Every week, our audience is growing, and that's exciting, you know. So if you are been following us for a while, you already know the rules. But if you're a first timer, be sure to check out the previous episodes and do me a favor, leave me a review on iTunes so you can help more people to find the show. Today, guys, I have the honor to introduce you to the founder and owner of Rhizome Productions. Rhizome is an event production company based in Nashville, Tennessee, and they conceive and produce craft beer, spirits, and food events with a focus on education. They operate roughly 20 events per year in different cities across the country, and since 2011, they have raised over $800,000 for local charities. The pandemic and the recent events happening all over the country have not been an obstacle for Matt to keep serving these industries. So in this episode, he will share with us how he's been pivoting, how he's keeping his business running and helping others and keep bringing the same experience virtually. So welcome to the show, Matt. It is a pleasure to have you here, brother.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me on. Usually I'm the one doing the interview every Tuesday and Thursday night. So it's nice to be a guest on your show and talk about everything that's going on in this world. So thank you, Pedro. And thanks everybody who is watching now or tunes in later.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for being here. And I'm sure it feels weird that it's not you now making the introduction, right?
It is. I've gotten so used to it. I think you said episode 22. I counted last night. I think last night was like my 34th episode since early April that we've been doing our weekly show. So,
wow. So we pretty much started almost at the same time, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, I started right towards the end of late March, you know, when we were stuck at home and everything was closed. That's when I decided I got to keep people engaged. But yeah, I've been doing it twice a week for, gosh, what is it? 4 months now. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm close to 6 months, and it's like, I mean, I don't feel the time anymore, man, with all these craziness going on. It's just like 22 episodes so far. It felt like yesterday I recorded my third episode. I know. It's crazy, but it's been a fun journey, man. I love doing this and helping others. So
I agree. It's great to just, you know, when we can't see each other in person, share a beer at a pub or a tap room. It's nice to, the interaction is still there. It's not the same, but it's a good way to stay in touch.
Absolutely, man. So we have to love technology nowadays, huh?
Thank God for technology.
Yeah, thank God, man. But anyway, man, let's jump right into the episode. I know we have a lot to talk today, and I know there's some great information you will share with us today, especially since you operate a company that eventually needs people to keep operating, but you have been able to pivot it and find a way to keep your business open and help others and still influence the industry. But let's start a little bit with your background, from your story, where you come from, so people can get to know you a little bit better, brother.
Of course. So I was born and raised actually in Long Island, New York, but I've lived in South Florida. I've lived in Atlanta, and I've now been in Nashville for about 10 years. And prior to starting Rhizome Productions, which would have been celebrating the 10th anniversary of some of our events this year, I was in the IT world. I was a tech guy, did all kinds of networking and administrative stuff like that. But now here I am almost 10 years in, producing festivals across the country. We have been hyper-focused on craft beer in the beginning. And then over the past 3 to 4 years, we've sort of shifted into the full spectrum of sort of food and beverage and hospitality, as well as even music festivals, but that's not been the priority. We came into it as craft beer people, and really made that our focal point in the beginning, and it slowly turned into a full-time thing. So I definitely was doing a lot of multitasking in the early years, right. Probably the first 3 years of Rhizome. It was, doing the IT job during the day and working on festivals at night. So we started with our first year in 2011, we did 2 festivals, and then it kind of started rolling uphill from there in a good way. So we would have celebrated the 10th anniversary of our first event back in April. It was the East Nashville Beer Festival, which has been one of our best, most well-received events and raises a ton of money for a great local charity. So it's been an amazing ride. I'm seeing, what's going on right now is hopefully just a really big, long speed bump and we'll get over it eventually. But as you said, obviously we're going to adapt to this and find ways to do things differently while we have to, but we are in the business of bringing people together for many good reasons. One being beer, of course, one being community and charity as well. So, and of course, education. It plays a big role in why we do our beer events, is making sure our consumers learn more from our events, not just let's go get drunk and party in a field. There's a lot more to it, and a lot of curation and thought that goes behind all of our events. So we are very bummed to not be out there doing them this year, but we know we're making the right decision, obviously, keeping everybody safe and healthy, which is our number one priority right now.
Absolutely, man. It's kind of a bummer, you know, because I was ready to go to concerts and festivals and everything this year because, you know, I just recently moved to Texas. So I was ready to experience my first summer in Texas and travel everywhere and get drunk pretty much, you know, and
got
have
to
a lot
enjoy
of fun.
some beers. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And, you know, but you mentioned something very important about the educational part, man, because I think in order for the industry that before COVID, it was growing extremely fast, right? It was crazy how fast the industry was growing.
For sure.
You know, I think the education to the consumer is a very important part, you know, because if the consumer is doesn't know exactly the difference between an IPA, a lager, and all these kind of things, so how they can really know exactly what they want and what they like. So what has been that experience when it comes to educating the consumer? Because I think that is something that can happen not only in the events that you were producing before, and obviously you will keep producing, but it's something that breweries can implement right away in their marketing strategies and whatever they're trying to do to keep their doors open. So share a little bit more about that educational part, man.
Well, from the very beginning with our first event to, you know, the most recent one we were able to do in 2019, one of the things that we always made a very strong point of, if we were going to throw a festival with, say, 30 breweries, the 30 breweries that were participating, they had to be there. It wasn't, let's just buy beer from a distributor and pour it. We want the breweries to be in attendance. And we've built a lot of long, great relationships with breweries all over the country. And, you know, we would communicate these ideas with them. And obviously we would make a very strong point of having brewery representatives there. We would also push really hard on making sure that the beers that they were bringing were not only representative of who they are as a brewery, but showed a large variety of styles. And to have them there behind the table, speaking about those beers to our guests is what's really important. But what we did to sort of further that benefit and that experience was our events were never gigantic in terms of customer attendance. We always sort of kept them in what we felt was a range based on the amount of breweries, the space of the event. We sort of designed them where the consumer and the brewer could have the greatest experience possible and be able to actually talk to one another. Because that's where the education comes from. It's that personal connection that you can have at an event in person or now on one of these.
Right.
You know, however you get there, it's just being able to provide the right way to deliver that information. So, and part of that was also creating an event that offered the brewers as well as the guests a good experience and a good quality of life. So we felt that the brewers that were attending, whether it was a sales rep or the actual owner or brewer of the brewery, that we treated them just as well, if not better, than the people who bought tickets to be there. And that was always sort of the top priority for us is, you know, if we're going to build these events, we're going to build these relationships with breweries all over the country and really all over the world at this point. We want to take care of our brewers. And that's where the education then becomes really more beneficial because everybody feels a sense of ownership over helping create that mission. You know, breweries right now, obviously with tap rooms potentially not being open for on-site consumption, they're doing that curbside. You know, I think creating a video series, whether it's live or recorded, where they can provide a tasting opportunity where people can learn about the beers that are being released is probably a very worthy consideration. And there's so many great ways to get that out there, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I even saw now you can like post your videos too. I mean, there's so many ways to get this content to your consumer, to your distributor, to your accounts. I mean, the whole industry, if you're going to take the time to educate, why not make it useful to everybody who is buying your beer, selling your beer, drinking your beer, or interested in your beer? So, you know, that's the future for now. Let's hope it's not forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I totally understand that, man. And you mentioned something very important too, that when you have and start working on those relationships with your audience, with your, with other breweries, with distributors and all that kind of stuff, that give that sense of ownership to them as well, which is one of the greatest consumers' behavior we've been seeing during this year, like social media and all that kind of stuff have made the consumer want to like, oh, I want to be part of this too. I want to be part of your brand. So if you're not bringing that education to them, how in the hell are you going to make them part of your brand, right? People need that.
Exactly.
That sense of like, I belong to this brewery. I belong to here. That sense of belonging. You know what I mean?
It's definitely very important. And I think for breweries right now, I'm probably going off topic a little bit, but having that connection, especially with your wholesaler, they're probably selling a lot of your beer for you, depending on what size brewery you are. It is so important that your sales reps that work with your brand at your distributor know the education and the story and the history behind every beer that you create. It's so much more important now than ever. I think using the resources that are available to us that we probably should have always been using, but now we're forced to use them, maybe is a good thing for the long run. I think it will help a lot of brewers and brewery owners retool how they build parts of their business for the future.
Right. This might not sound like a popular opinion, but I think it's a great thing that all this is happening at some point, and the reason why I say it that way, my friend, is because you get what you focus on, so even that we're going through one of the hardest times in history, right? You cannot focus on the bad side of the situation because you're only going to attract more bad things into your business and into your life. But you can focus on the right things, and then eventually you're going to be able to see and find the solutions, which is one of the things that you have done during this time. So I know you have your own show too, and you've been, like you said, 34 episodes so far, right?
Yep, something like that.
which is pretty awesome. So tell us what has been that experience for you and your company, someone who were planning events, like attracting thousands of people to different events. How has been that experience for you to take that part of your business and start putting it online and start delivering the same virtual experience?
Sure. Well, I'll take you on like a little bit of a timeline story here. So
go ahead.
Let's go back to like Friday. No. Let's go back to Wednesday, March 11th. So we were literally packing our trailer for our first weekend of events of our season. So our season usually starts in early March. Then we'll run up until about June or July because it gets so hot in Tennessee that we try to hopefully travel where it's a little cooler to do events. But we were literally packing up, getting ready to head to Chattanooga for a weekend of 2 events. And here in Nashville was the NCAA basketball tournament. You saw Tom Hanks get diagnosed with COVID down in Australia. Like the shit literally hit the fan that week into the weekend that we had these first 2 events. And the writing was on the wall. We were going to have to postpone. Obviously at that point we're like, well, we'll postpone. Maybe we'll get to do it in a month. Maybe we'll get to do it in 2 months. But obviously, so one after another, obviously April, we would have had our East Nashville Beer Fest. That event postponed. We had several events in May postponed. Here we are, it's almost August. So, I think at first, as with everybody, we were all kind of in shock. We didn't really know what was happening. Those first 2 weeks, starting on what I've been referring to as D-Day, March 13th, that's when things got pretty serious here in Nashville and businesses were closing and people were, hoarding toilet paper and soap and all kinds of stupid things. But look, there was a lot of unknowns at that moment. And I'm very grateful that right now, well, even though COVID is not under control, at least we know what we can do to keep each other safe. And we know that, walking outside is not going to get you COVID. So,
absolutely.
So very, very quickly, I knew that for my own sanity as a business owner, I had to at least stay engaged with everybody that we do business with. And like I said, we do business with hundreds of breweries across the country, distributors, retail accounts, restaurant owners, distilleries, you name it, food and beverage. Those are the people that are sort of in our inner circle, and we wanted to stay in touch with them and just learn from them. So I started doing Rhizome Live, which is what we call it, which is every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8:00 Central Time. And like I said, we just did, I'm pretty sure it was our 34th, maybe 35th episode. Predominantly brewery conversations. We've had a few distilleries on, a couple writers and journalists have been on the show. And it's great. And it's a great way to stay engaged. We do promote it to consumers through our email list and our social media channels. It's probably a little bit more industry geeky than for your daily drinker to watch. But we've been building on it. We have some shows that, will get 100, 200 views in 24 hours. Whereas great example, last night's show, we have over 800 views already in under 24 hours, which is great to see. So every show's different and every show attracts a different audience, but that's what we've been doing there. And that's, again, more sort of the industry side of us staying connected with everybody we work with. Obviously, it's not about revenue generation there. It's more about staying connected and giving breweries a way to talk to people about what they're doing, how they're dealing, exciting topics. I know it's hard to find those, but breweries are still innovating, making new beers and products, and we want a platform to help them share that. And then alternatively, trying to bring back some of the revenue that we have lost and will continue losing. We have now done 2 virtual beer experiences, as we call them, or we call them Rhizome, because you're doing it at your house. And we're keeping those very curated, which is similar to how we do our larger scale events that are in person. But we're targeting literally 24 groups or 24 people, you could say, where we curate this package that has different beers from different breweries across really the country and the world. We're doing our first international beer tasting. Doing all Belgian beers. And we create this package. It includes chocolate, cheese, charcuterie, merchandise from all the breweries. And then, of course, the beers. You pick them up at a local retailer here in Nashville, and you take it home. And then we do a live event via Zoom, like we are here today. And it's been really great. We've been pleasantly surprised by the level of engagement from the guests as well as the brewers. We also throw in a quick 10-minute tiny concert, as we like to call it. And then, we're in Music City, so we feel like we had to have music play a role. And then at the end, we do a 15-minute sort of Q&A happy hour where a lot of the brewers stay on and talk a little bit more about any other topics that our guests want to talk to. And, like I said, obviously it's not a replacement for the revenues that we would have been generating with our larger events and our travel events that we co-produce for other people. But it's a way, again, to keep our customers engaged, give our breweries an opportunity to have an intimate sort of connection with somebody who's maybe going to go buy that 6-pack at the grocery store, which is oh so important right now.
Right.
But again, it is not a replacement for what we normally do. I think it's become obviously an alternative, and I could see it being something we continue doing even beyond the days of COVID, I hope. But it's been great. It's been great to see the response. The brewers appreciate it and the guests appreciate it. And, this is the time to adapt. I keep saying it, adapt or die. That's it.
Absolutely, man. You're totally right. And what you were mentioning all the process of these events that you've been doing. I was thinking about it could be a great idea also. I mean, this is just my perspective, that at the end of that Q&A, maybe have some sort of like upsell box, like, hey, you like that beer that you try from my brewery? I mean, you can get these other box with the rest of our beers for X amount of money,
Not a bad idea.
And we ship it. Yeah, because, and the reason why I mentioned that is because, like you said, it's time to adapt, right? And one of the things that I believe most breweries haven't adapted yet is to the fact that they also have to elaborate sales plans. Like selling stuff, it doesn't mean that you have to shove your products or your beers in people's faces, but if you know that it's going to bring some value, and I always said that brings value to everybody's lives, because you cannot buy happiness, but you can buy beer, right? Which is pretty much the same.
Pretty much, yeah, it's close enough, right?
Yeah, so you have the moral obligation to sell your beer.
I agree with that. Yeah,
it can be, obviously it's not gonna equal the amount of revenue you were getting from the events, but I think it is something, I don't know, maybe give it a thought about having those upsell boxes. You like this brewery, why you don't try the rest of the boxes? You pay now, we'll ship it to you.
That is a cool idea. Obviously you probably know this, as many people who watch this, there's obviously some challenges with shipping beer directly to consumers. A lot of states it's illegal. So that's why we've built this model for our local market. And we may look to work in some other markets where we find a retail partner and sort of help them do this, as opposed to, like, we're very hands-on with it here because we're in our hometown. I'm literally the one who puts every single beer in the box that you go and pick up at our retail partner. But I think this is a concept that could translate to other markets. Maybe maybe you and I team up and we do it in Dallas with a great retail partner.
I'm in. I mean, it will be a cool experiment, because maybe you cannot do it in other states where you're not allowed to ship and all that stuff. But if the people like in your city right now, they're willing to drive to go pick up the box, what makes you think they're not going to drive again for a second box full of value?
It's true. It's true. And one of the things, like I said, obviously, retailers, off-premise retailers are doing really thankfully, fingers crossed, are doing really well right now because people are drinking at home. And one of the things that we've been able to hopefully do for that retailer here is that by these folks coming and buying this box, which they buy online, of course, and pick up safely, but they are visiting that store, and that store is fully online. So you could go online and say, hey, I'm already coming to pick up this box. And they get that upsell of maybe somebody buying a couple bottles of wine, or, we're in Tennessee, we love our whiskey. People may buy a bottle of whiskey alongside that. So there is benefits there. And then obviously in other markets, we can see that as well. So I like that idea. We'll talk more about that offline.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about it, man, because it can be a great venue to help breweries, which is the whole point here,
It is. And the thing that I think the breweries that have participated with us on these, that what they appreciate is that this isn't necessarily like a volume play. This is literally a case of every beer from each brewery that participates. So we generally do 6 breweries. They each pick 2 beers. We're talking 2 cases of beer per brewery. Not, this isn't about volume, but those 24 people that are participating have this very direct and personal connection because of this experience. And even though it's not in person, on the other end of the screen, like you and I are right now, you've got a brewery owner or the person who made that beer, or who, used to travel around Tennessee selling that beer so you could enjoy it at your local watering hole. And so to have that really direct and personal connection for 2 hours, I think people really appreciate that. And on the brewery side, you're hopefully now gaining, even if it's not all of them, let's say 50% of those people now are like, wow, I'm going to support that brewery because they spent the time to come on that call, talk about the beers, and the beers were awesome to top it off.
Right. No, and the other thing that is important is that it is also, it is a project that can have a huge impact in a brewery's future, because you might not be selling the same amount, but if you keep nurturing your audience, your consumers, the people who likes your beer through events like this, through little virtual tastings and stuff like that, eventually when everything is going to go back to normal, guess what? They're going to remember you.
Of course. They're going to show up in your tap room and be so grateful that, they got to experience it or discover your beer. I mean, we just did one this past Saturday, and it was all local Nashville breweries. And most of the people lived in the Nashville area. And I got I got 3 separate emails from 3 separate guests that were like, hey, New Heights is the name of the brewery. We've been sleeping on New Heights. We didn't know how amazing their beer was, and now we do. And they immediately went online. I sent them the link, and they ordered beer and went and picked it up curbside.
Sweet.
And in the package, they got a coupon for a free tour and a free beer when the tap room reopens, because they unfortunately have to be closed right now.
Exactly.
And and those 3 customers, that's a difference maker right now.
Yeah.
Right now it's about loyalty, not necessarily about volume. Obviously, every brewery needs the volume, but your loyal customer is not going to come in and buy a 6-pack. They're going to come in and buy a case or 2 right now because they want to support you and help you get through this. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to nurture that or create those connections.
Absolutely. And that's the essence of marketing and stuff like that. Like that little card, it sounds like insignificant, like add a little card saying you can get a free beer when we open again. People don't understand the impact that things like that have on the consumer's mind, And it can make a huge difference the next couple of months, whatever the hell is going to happen later. We don't know what the fuck's going on, but it is what it is. But, based on that experience and I know that we mentioned before we started the show, you've been interviewing a lot of brewery owners and being focused a lot on what they've been doing through all this period of time where everything is crazy. Like every single day we need to come out with something new. I know that you shared this experience that is amazing, and I really want to talk about it later, because I think we can definitely do something in different cities and expand it, I mean, the sky's the limit, right?
It is.
And but I want you to tell us a little bit about what has been the main, like the common thing you see among brewery owners that he's been able to helping them during this time. You know what I'm trying to ask?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think obviously, speaking just to the sales side of selling beer, obviously, if you already were canning your beer, you're in great shape. If you were bottling your beer, which we know not many people are doing bottles right now anymore, those 2 things I think have been the saving grace. And the number one thing that's been saving every brewery's butt is if they have beer on shelves at grocery, Target, Walmart, the big retailers. You know, obviously the larger private or you know, locally owned retailers in your home market, incredibly important as well. You know, I think breweries that were very, very dependent, obviously, on their tap room before for that business, those are the ones that are probably suffering the most. But obviously, they've all been able to hopefully adapt and get crowler fills and growler fills. We even had a brewery here in Nashville that there was, I guess, a short time that they couldn't get crowlers. They were putting beer in mason jars, and you know, ingenuity, you know, and adapting and pivoting, the three sort of main words I would say are most used, has been super important. But I think that ability to, whether a lot of it had to do with production timing and scheduling, you know, shifting beer that would have went to kegs into package was obviously extremely important. Relationships with your wholesaler and what to do with beer that was potentially going to go out of code was obviously a very common topic. I think that a lot of breweries had to speak to. And it seems like everybody did a really good job with that. I mean, we know there was loss, and, you know, most people didn't realize that it actually costs money to destroy beer. You can't just pour it down the drain. Right. You know, and it wasn't cost effective to turn beer into hand sanitizer just because the alcohol content is so low. It's actually highly inefficient to turn into sanitizer. So I think there was a great level of high level communication between brewers and wholesalers on how to manage out of code beer. And that topic seems to have really kind of gone away because everybody's been able to shift into packaging extremely heavily. You know, some cities and states, bars or restaurants, I should say, are back open. So there's a little bit of draft getting back into the market. But breweries very quickly had to sort of figure out how to change their business or completely reinvent their business. You saw obviously breweries doing home delivery, which was a common thread, especially in Tennessee. Almost every county in Tennessee, breweries have been able to do home delivery. And then of course, curbside, being able to, you know, receive orders online. You know, a lot of breweries didn't have that online beer ordering capability. Now they do. And that's been also, I think, extremely important. We have heard from a handful of breweries that sort of the home delivery has kind of slowed down or really dried up just because things are back open. But if we see things close again, that may come back and be more important to them once again. So, you know, overall, I think breweries very quickly had to change their business model, and all of the ones that I've spoken to have done such an amazing job doing that overnight. It's kind of amazing. Right. Literally overnight, you now have a robust online store that showcases all your beers. You are, you know, doing delivery routing and figure out, hey, how do I get beer all over the city? What's the most efficient way to do that? And then of course, building stronger relationships with, you know, independent retailers has become even more important because beer is going into more cans and more bottles and ways for people to get it home. So that's probably been, I think, the most important. I think it's been exciting to see that brewers have still been able to sort of release new beers. Obviously, if those beers were in tanks, there was no choice. But I think innovation has still continued. Maybe it's slowed down a little bit, or there's a few less new beers coming out, depending on what type of brewery you are. But that's been really great to see. And I think breweries are very lucky that people who drink beer are going to keep drinking beer. And even with the economy being in a tough position from a consumer standpoint, people are still buying beer. You know, the 1999 4-pack may not move as quickly as it was, you know, a couple of months ago. Yeah. But those consumers are still there, maybe just a little bit slower. But that's probably been, I think just the ability of these breweries to just change their business model so rapidly has been really great to see that. And I think it speaks to the industry as a whole. Like craft beer is still pretty young. There are some old guard, amazing players, you know, Sierra Nevada, 40 years, celebrating 40 years this year. Yeah. They've shown so much of how to do things well. But you know, there's more breweries in our country now than ever. A lot of them are very young, and it's been really cool to see how quickly many of them have been able to change their business model so quickly. And it's survival. And that's the reality. So that's probably been the biggest thing that I've seen from these calls of what's the most sort of impressive to me.
Man, that's huge, you know, because like you said, the industry is still very young, and you know, man, I'm not trying to ignore the fact that we're going through really hard times, but like I said before, you get what you focus on, and if you want to survive, you want to thrive, you need to focus on the right things, you know. And I think, like I said, it's a great opportunity, especially for the young breweries, to really learn and implement things that they're gonna take them like to the next level in the next couple of months, in the next couple of years. They're gonna be able to build very, very stable businesses as well, you know. So I think it's a great opportunity, and like all the delivery and all that stuff, don't forget about that, you know. Even that it's getting a little bit slow right now, but probably it's because it's summer and people wants to be out too, you know. Restaurants are open, so we've been a couple months in our houses. I want to go eat outside too, you know. So eventually it's going to pick up again, because it's something that, you know, I know that you need 21 days to create a new habit, and you need 90 days to lock that habit down. So we've been in this situation for over 90 days. So there's definitely new behaviors that the consumer adapted already, and it's going to keep continue to grow. Yeah, they're going to be slow seasons and high seasons and stuff like that, but it just depends on the season as well. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. I think, I think my hope is, and this won't happen everywhere, but my hope is that states that have allowed these changes to occur, I hope they're not temporary. I think brewery, you know, a neighborhood brewery should be able to deliver to a consumer. That just should be. You know, if you choose to make that relationship with a wholesaler and that's how people get your beer, that's fine. But if you're a small community brewery, as I like to call them, that really is trying to support the local neighborhood or surrounding neighborhoods, why not allow them to deliver directly? You know, it's not, they're not delivering a truckload of beer. They're delivering a case or two. And that direct personal connection of being able to knock on the door and be like, hey, your beer is here. Can I please see your ID to make sure you're old enough? I think, you know, the industry is responsible and wise enough to do that safely. I don't think we need a gas station to be the intermediary there, you know, for like your neighborhood place to go buy something to drink. So I think some of the changes that have started to happen and have been continuing, hopefully will remain. You know, I don't want them to remain because of COVID. I want COVID to go away and not come back. But, you know, a lot of breweries are learning how to adapt their business. And like you said, it's going to hopefully be for the better in the long run. As long as they can survive it. I know you're in Texas. I know I saw some dismal reports coming out of Texas that two out of every three breweries might close by the end of the year if the TABC doesn't change the rules that are impacting breweries. And I hate to think that is not just limited to Texas. I think there's a lot of breweries that are young, that maybe, you know, pretty leveraged by debt, that are not going to be able to survive it. And I don't think we've unfortunately seen the real financial impacts yet of this pandemic. I think there's still a lot of runway for, unfortunately, things to not be positive. I mean, my fingers are crossed for everybody, but I don't think we've really truly seen the full impacts. Obviously, there's a lot of things happening in the economy with unemployment and all the stimulus that we may or may not see, that's going to make things really challenging for small businesses, not just breweries, any small business. So, you know, restaurants, you name it. It's, I think there's still some scary times ahead. I'm hopeful I'm wrong, but it'll be tough, you know, and, you know, myself included. You know, we're a very small business. You know, we produce like a lot of events, but we're still a very small company, and we're very lucky to not have a large overhead, and a lot of our events, you know, can live on whenever they can continue. But you got to hope that there is a vaccine that allows us to get back out there in a normal sense. And then, of course, that people can afford to get back out there and keep going to events and bars and restaurants and breweries and spend that money as they've been. So let's hope that all that recovers in the way we need to see it, because it's going to have a grave impact if not.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's going to take a while to recover. But here's the thing, man. I believe that no doesn't matter how long it can take. You have to focus on keep working towards your recovery, towards rebuild our businesses, because like you said, everybody is being affected by this. Every single small business is going to be affected by this. But eventually, yeah, it might be hard right now, but if you just stop there, like, it's just not going to be any solution for you. You know, you just got to keep going and at least know that you tried, you know, and you did everything you could to keep your business alive, you know. So I think that's very, very, very important to keep in mind, you know. Like, yeah, it's hard times, but, you know, I've been working more than ever for the past 4 or 6 months. I don't even know how long we've been in this shit, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's too long.
yeah, it's been too long, and I've been working hard, and my business has been affected too, but it's not stopping me from getting what I want, you know. And this is the purpose of the show too, like put this information, knowledge, like the one that you're sharing with us right now, so people can see, like, you know, yeah, we can get through this. We just need to look a little bit deeper into our whatever you have in front of us, so we
Of
can see
course.
the solutions, you know, and find a way to get out of this shitty situation. But
Definitely.
you
And I
know,
think communication and networking and speaking to others in the industry, whether you know them personally or not, just, you know, watching your show, watching my show. And we know that there's tons of great content out there through all the different, you know, channels that you can find. And, you know, maybe not everything is beneficial to you, but, you know, trying to stay engaged and just staying on top of what other people are doing and asking those questions. I think that's one of the great things about the craft beer community is there's a strong sense of community and camaraderie and helping each other. And, you know, that's more important now than ever. So I think that's hopefully a good enough reason for everybody to stay engaged, is just, you know, hopefully you get a good idea or some good direction from somebody that you know or don't know in the industry that can help your business answer a question that you're concerned about.
absolutely. And I will add to that, also look for other industries, you know, success leave clues. So, and I've been able to learn from different industries to be where I am today. So I think that's something that keep a mind open is what I'm trying to say, you know,
Agreed.
that's why in this show, like I was telling you before, man, I bring people from different industries because there's so many things that can be used and implemented in the craft beer industry and help breweries be more successful. But anyway,
I
but
agree.
now I wanted to ask you this, man, because I know, again, you already shared with us a little bit of your experience of everything that you've been learning for the past couple of months with your show and the people that you have interviewed. What is one of the main things you believe breweries should be put their attention to more than anything else for the next 6 months to get through the rest of the year?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the staying connected to your consumer that we spoke to already, obviously, is very important. You know, I do think, and we keep seeing this come up over the past few days, the supply chain on cans. There's a lot of stress there. So you know, this obviously, if you're not a giant brewery, there's probably not a whole lot you can unfortunately do to, you know, to pull on the purse strings or get priority there. But I think staying ahead on your supply chain of everything you need to produce your beer and package your beer, I think is going to get more and more important. You know, if we're not seeing beer sales necessarily slow down in the whole category, but between seltzers and everything else in cans, let's not forget you've got soda, sparkling water, which is a huge business right now, or seltzer, non-alcoholic seltzer. There's a lot of stress and demand on the pipeline for cans. And I know I read an article just yesterday. There's a large manufacturer down in Mexico that I think is now getting a lot of demand from American producers, and then even Asian markets obviously are looking to bring that ability or that availability of product to the States. But you're going to pay a hefty price tag, I'm sure, to get that across the ocean. So I think, you know, obviously breweries always were planning ahead, creating brew schedules, whether it was, you know, quarterly, bi-yearly, or even yearly. I think looking at that scheduling of production is going to become more and more important than ever, just as there may be supply and demand issues on certain items that breweries need to use, whether it's sanitation, packaging, raw materials, whatever that may be. I mean, I did have a show where we spoke to a couple different people that provide hops and grains and yeast for the brewing industry. And when we spoke back, I think it was late April, early May, things were pretty good. There was a little bit of strain on yeast, White Labs yeast. Right. But I think that they were able to recover from those challenges pretty quickly. And so I think forecasting and staying ahead of supply chain is probably going to be really important. And then for breweries that are working with local distributors or distributors across the country, it's probably going to be really important, I think, to keep them engaged and making sure that their sales teams are as knowledgeable as possible to ensure that your beer gets to the right place.
Wow, that's a powerful one. The sales part, man. Yeah, because that's what's gonna
That's
bring the
everything
cash
right
in.
now. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's everything.
yeah. So yeah, don't be afraid to sell, guys. Like it's important to have a sales plan, to have a sales strategy. It's very important. That I think we have conversation about that before. But anyway, man, I think those are very, very strong points that people should be focusing right now. Because again, we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the year, man. I'm just going to keep celebrating that I'm alive, keep drinking
Yeah.
beer and keep building my
Drink beer and
business.
stay healthy, right?
Yeah, and stay healthy, keep working out and all that stuff and have fun while we can. But anyway, man, so what other plans you have for the future right now? I know that you tried this virtual event. It's been working really well. There's something that you're planning on the future to keep serving your clients, the industry, the consumer. What are the plans for the next for the rest of the year, pretty much?
Sure. So I think our intentions are to continue with our virtual events. Like I said earlier, we have 2 scheduled for August, two for September. And I think realistically, we'll probably look to schedule 2 of those every month through the end of the year. What we've been doing sort of offline and, behind the scenes is we've been sort of planning for all the different scenarios of when live events can come back. Obviously there's a best case scenario that maybe is pretty far down the road, but there may be some mid-range scenarios where we find ourselves able to say, get back out there and do an event for 500 people or do an event for 1,000 people where the social distancing and safety aspect still needs to play a pretty big role in how we do what we do. So we've been working pretty hard to just sort of have those contingency plans sort of documented and ready to execute across all of our platforms of events. Because like I said, we do events that we own, we do events that other people own that we produce for them. And we just want to be sort of prepared if there is an opportunity where, say, numbers, say in Nashville come down and we're allowed to get back out there with proper social distancing and mediation, that we're ready to deliver that experience. Because I think the demand will be there. Yeah. And it may be a mad dash for the resources to pull off what we do. On the other hand, it may not. We may see a lot of events that unfortunately don't return. And I've been in various Zoom calls in the industry, not just the beer industry, but the event space, where there are a lot of concerns where some of the larger, say, music festivals may not be able to survive 2 years of not taking place just because of the sheer size and expense that it takes to produce those kind of events. So we're kind of, that's sort of been a big focus for us, is just sort of being prepared for what it looks like when live events can occur again. Obviously, we want it to be the best case scenario, but we also, we are in the business of bringing people together, and right. We want to be prepared to do that in any way that is possible, that of course is safe, and that of course all the breweries and distributors and distilleries and guests that we work with and invite to be there want to be there and feel safe about being there. So that's sort of been our big focal points. And it's tough. It's tough to envision it, but we want to be prepared for it.
But that gives you options. And I think it's something that, anybody right now listening to this at this point in time or in the future, is something that you guys can do as well. Like literally put on the table every single scenario that can happen from today to the rest of the year, and have an idea that what can happen, what can be the outcome of whatever is going on right now, and when you have those options available, then you can see, okay, this is happening. So, okay, we should pick this card, and use this card this time. This is going to help us to get through for the next 30 days. And in the next 30 days, things change. You have your options available. So I think that's a great strategy to have your options in different scenarios in place to know whatever can happen. You're ready to move forward and get back in business, So I think that's a great advice, man. Thank you.
My pleasure. I think it applies to any industry too. It's not just obviously our space. I think it applies to the brewers, brewery owners. And I think brewery owners have already had to do that, which is great. But I think they need to be prepared to continue doing that. Yeah,
absolutely. Totally agree with you, man. But anyway, we've been almost an hour here. It's crazy.
Time flies.
But it's been a great conversation, man. You're really sharing some great information here and things that that people can implement right away, But before we leave, man, I just have two more questions to ask you,
Yeah.
So first of all, where people can find you. Maybe somebody listening to this can pick up your brain a little bit with the virtual events that you're doing, or something that can
For sure.
that can learn from you, that can help them in their business. So where people can find you. And then the last question, just leave us with one last piece of advice for everybody listening to the show right now or later, man. Something
Awesome.
that can be implemented at any point in time, you know? So.
Sure. So the best way to kind of keep up with what we're doing, our website, we're actually going to revamp. So our website is just rhizomeproductions.com. But we keep our social media channels pretty busy these days. So on Facebook, it's just facebook.com/Rhizome Productions. And our Rhizome Live show, you can watch every Tuesday and Thursday on Facebook or on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and just search Rhizome Live, it will come up, and you can see also all of our previous shows on there. And then on Instagram, it's also Rhizome Productions on Instagram. And we try to keep our social channels pretty busy these days. So there's definitely daily content and posts and information there. So that's how you can keep up with us. And like I said, we're going to hopefully by the end of next week, we'll have a new website where we're going to start databasing all of our live videos. And then our Rhizome events, we keep those, like I said, those are pretty tight knit here in the Nashville community. So we don't necessarily broadcast those out too far and wide, but you can see those on our Facebook page as well. And we list those on Eventbrite when we put them on sale. And hopefully we can find a way to do those for some of your friends and family in Dallas.
Yeah, man, that will be fun.
I like that idea. We actually, we did an event in Dallas for 2 years back in the, I think it was in 2015 and 2016. We did a winter warmer beer festival in Dallas 2 years in a row. So we've got a couple ties down there.
Nice.
And then let's see, a piece of advice. Well, 1, wear a mask, please. 2, don't be an asshole. And then, I think it really speaks to what we've spoke to most of the show. I think being ready to adapt and change rapidly is probably the most important thing that any business owner can do right now. And if you're not able to make those changes on the fly, you're going to struggle. And because unfortunately the atmosphere that we're living in and working in, it is a situation where you don't have necessarily the luxury of time. You like perfect example here in Nashville, the mayor gave restaurants, I think, a 48-hour notice that starting in 2 days, you're going to have to close your doors at 10 o'clock at night, no matter what.
Wow.
And so that's hard. It's hard for a restaurant. Yeah. You lose a whole turn of your dining room. So that is the key right now, is just being able to make those changes on the fly so your business can survive.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, man. I think that's actually a really powerful advice, because like I said, it's the only thing we have right now, Yeah. There's nothing else. But anyway, man, I really appreciate you taking the time of being here, man. I really appreciate all the information that you have shared with us. And
that was great.
And, yeah, man, I really had a good time. And hopefully, I'm looking forward to see what we can do together and collaborate, man. That will be awesome. All for the sake of the industry and helping others, So thank you for being here, man. And for you guys listening, if you enjoyed the show, make sure you share it with somebody, put it in a DM, social media, text message, email, whatever you can do to help us spread the word. And also make sure you leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can help more people to find the show and get access to all this valuable information. And lastly, if you're ready to grow your sales and take your brewery to the next level, make sure you head to onlinemenu.marketingbrewingco.com and watch the free video on how you can grow your sales online. I will see you guys for the next episode. In the meantime, be safe, keep working hard, and cheers. Later. Hey guys, thank you for watching. This show was brought to you by the Marketing Brewing Company, an industry-leading marketing provider and coaching firm. If this episode have provided with valuable information for you and your business, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you know somebody who needs to hear this, share it with them. Send me a text message, a DM, put it on social media, whatever you can do to spread the word. And lastly, if you're a brewery owner ready to take your business to the next level, make sure you head to marketingbrewingco.com and fill out the form to get started and get your free assessment of your current marketing and sales strategies. I will see you guys for the next episode. In the meantime, cheers.